The heart of true sex education, when you talk about genital sexuality, is that you tell yourself, my body is good all over because God made it good, because I'm worth something, and I respect myself because God put this respect in me. Whether or not, in later life, I marry and have a family of my own, I still have this power for new life. Another point, we make the point very strongly that sexual intercourse is something extremely sacred that God made. And this is where you can expect to be snowed under by a propaganda barrage for the filthy, almighty dollar. Because you, in your age, are the recipients, I could say, you're simply the bullseye goal of a multi-million-dollar campaign to get teenage money with sex as the bait. The sad part is there are too many people that buy the bait. The point is, you never laugh at sex, you never laugh at sexual intercourse. But when you hear all this stuff thrown at you, people say, the kids are going to the dogs, the teenagers are going to the dogs, everybody's doing it, play around all you want. What they don't know is that there's a tremendous core of goodness in the human race that does not buy this idea everybody's doing it. And they also don't know when they say that human nature can figure out very carefully there is a plan in the body that means that playing around with sexual intercourse before marriage does not work. What do I mean? You have to realize that God Almighty put into us a very magnificent plan. Our body is nothing else but one big symbol, if you want to look at it that way. In other words, the kind word, the gift, the embrace, all of this means externally, I think so much of you. And on the other hand, the angry word, the clenched fist, means I don't think so much of you at all. If you don't believe how much our body's a symbol, it's a good experiment to do. Stare at yourself sometime in a mirror and keep staring. Stare until you just get tired of looking at yourself. You'll find that you're looking at a stranger and even more at a strange thing. It's a most disconcerting experience. Now, what is the symbolism of sexual intercourse? It's the bodily way for one man to tell one woman, I completely give myself to you with absolutely nothing held back. And I accept your complete gift of yourself to me with nothing held back. And this is why it works in marriage. This is why it cannot work outside marriage. Oh, I admit it's misused. You've heard about it all over. No doubt about it. But it can be misused as a symbol of hate. Sexual intercourse could be misused as a symbol of selfishness, where a man would use a woman or a woman would use a man just for all I could get out of the other party. And that's exactly the complete misuse of a magnificent, beautiful symbolism God put in us. The fact should be, sexual intercourse is a symbol of love. And as a symbol of love, it can only work when one man and one woman belong completely to each other, and that's marriage. See, what happens when kids play around? Oh, they get their privacy someplace or other, maybe a back seat of a parked car. Intercourse can occur. It's a devastating experience. Why? It's rushed. They feel guilty about it. They might be caught. What's going to happen? They feel a miracle of sudden intimacy, and yet they say, but we don't know each other. Then it's all over. Now what do I do? I guess you go home. I guess I go home. Will we see each other again? I don't know. Does it matter? See how different this is from marriage. Because in married life, a husband and wife belong completely to each other, and it's a 24-hour-a-day career. It's not a matter of simply moonlight and roses. You know, people think that it's something like canoeing down the local river in the moonlight, and that's marriage. It is not. Marriage is more canoeing down the river, and you got to dodge the beer cans and all these spare tires thrown in the river and all the other headaches. Marriage brings a lot of problems with it because you're living with another human being, with moods, with ups and downs and all the rest. And you got to fix a leaking roof, you got to pay for the groceries, and the kids get sick, and husband and wife get sick. These are the things that make marriage serious. So you see, when we say that sexual intercourse works in marriage, we mean this is an optional symbolism where love is bigger than sexual intercourse, because sexual intercourse gets its meaning from the love that gives it its meaning. And this is why it works in marriage. Can children understand this? In my sex education talk, I say yes. The little ones from the very earliest years up can understand it. God wants only married people to have babies, because if they're not married, who'd love the baby, who'd play with the baby, who'd sit up with the baby when the baby's sick? This is what we mean. Now, something else. The need for parents to have communication and affection in family life. You very frankly must realize that if you come from a family where by any accident you are not able to talk to your parents, for heaven's sake, Don't let that experience hurt you with regard to other people. There are girls who say, in the house I come from, there's nothing but shouting and screaming, and I'm treated like simply a blot on the face of the earth. And a girl like that will say, I'll take any kiss I can get anywhere, any moth-eaten Romeo, anything I'll get to make up for what I don't get at home. And a girl like that is making a mistake, realizing that she's taking cheap substitutes for affection. Actually, you should come from a family where the folks can talk to you and where you are accepted lovingly. Because I repeat, if you do not feel you're loved, you can't give love to anybody else. You say, well, what does happen? Suppose I do come from a family where I don't feel I'm loved. Then the answer has to be this. All right, I'll say, because somebody else needs me. For the love of those who need me, I'll try and help them. And I mean right now at your age, the people you're dealing with, don't think that because other teenagers don't tell you what's going on in their hearts, don't think that you don't mean a lot to them. The very fact that you can forget yourself and do something for them, you're already showing them you're helping them out. Now, in true sex education, we add something else. We tell the parents that if children are old enough to ask a question, they are old enough to get an answer suited to their age and mental development. We tell them that the whole theme here is a matter of respect and reverence. You cannot have enough reverence for sex. You never laugh at it. Oh, you can laugh with it. Funny things can happen. But the big point is you're not laughing at sex. Then, the next thing is, we always use refined and delicate language, because the language that we use indicates the respect that we have for our subject. Which means, if we're going to talk about the eye, the ear, the nose, the throat, our left elbow, our right ear, in the same way we can talk just as respectfully about the genital organs of our bodies. Because, my beloved friends, we have no dirty parts of our bodies. We have no filthy parts, no shameful parts, no unmentionable parts, no immodest parts. Instead, we have private parts that are the sacred parts, that are the genital parts, that are the holy parts. In other words, the organs in us that make it possible for a boy to beget new life as he grows older, and for a girl to bear new life. This is what we mean when we say respect. And one of the biggest secrets in proper sex education is that we use the proper language. You know very well, all of us have heard the gutter language. Why should we use gutter language only for our reproductive organs? And you simply cut the ground out from anybody who's using filth like that when you say, let's give them the names they deserve. And people so often, you know, in my talks, grown-ups will say, well, gee, I ain't no doctor, I don't know all them big words. You should say, I am no doctor, I don't know all those big words. You don't need a long list. 5 words give you the general idea. Penis for the male generative organ, vagina for female receptacle, womb, egg, and seed. That pretty well covers the main list. And any other thing you'd have, you'd simply be explaining what the organs are. Now, this is sacred. Do you see, this whole approach to sex education says it's not shameful, instead it's good, and because it's good, I talk about it that way. Then we tell the parents to better be years early than 1 second too late. And I also tell them that before puberty, which means before your present age, all of you now are of teenage high school age. Well before your age now, in other words, before 7th and 6th grade, all of you should have had the essentials on the meaning of birth, on the meaning of the organs of each sex, on the meaning of the Marriage Act, on the meaning of emission of seed in the male during sleep, and the meaning of menstruation in the female. You should know that this is the way God made the sexes. In other words, it should not be, as it were, a mystery. What does a boy look like? What does a girl look like? What goes on? What goes on? They're human beings. That's what they are. Now, what do we mean by sex education in the school and so-called VD education or venereal disease education? What should you know on this? To begin with, sex education in the school should never contradict sex education in the family, because otherwise, a pupil in school will think, if I get a healthy attitude towards the body at home, why does my school act as though the body is no good? Or vice versa. Both school and home should help each other out. Secondly, so many students in school don't get anything at home at all. That's why the school should do it. And a third reason, the school's attitude toward sex education, teaching its students you're worth something, your body's worth something, and we should be innocent, not ignorant. All of this would clean up a lot of the filth that goes on in any schoolyard. Because I think you'll admit, a lot of the smutty talk that you hear does not necessarily come from people in bad will. It comes from people who were never told that anything was decent. And so they only talk the way they've been told to talk. So on sex education in the school, we mean it would be the same thing as the sex education in the family that I gave, with the important factor that that a teacher that would be doing it would know the students and would be positive and help them out. And they'd have a good chance to ask questions. They should be innocent, not ignorant, because so much innocence has been lost through ignorance. Do you know that in one of the school systems of one of our large American cities, something like 1,200 girls have to leave high school every year because they're pregnant in high school? And it's been figured out, they figure out by talking to these girls, that more than half of these girls that get pregnant in high school don't know why they're pregnant. In other words, they were playing around with somebody sexually, and they did not even know the meaning of sexual intercourse and the responsibilities of bringing a new life in the world. That's why we say again, we should be innocent, not ignorant. Now, what is this so-called VD education? You know, people talk so much about VD. VD stands for venereal disease. Venereal disease, and it's named after the Roman goddess Venus. Venus was the goddess of sexual, I don't want to call it sexual love, because sexual love can be, if it's just say sex, that can be very selfish. Venus was not the goddess of true love, but anyway, she gets the name, and they say goddess of sexual love. From that, we get the name venereal disease, because the name venereal disease covers two special diseases, one called syphilis and the other called gonorrhea. Now, the fact is that the statistics on these diseases start in 7th grade up. In other words, once you have boys and girls able to generate or bear new life, this is the time when venereal diseases start. There is no city, no town, no country area where we are free from this. Venereal disease, though, is all over the country, and venereal disease means that we have something like this: over 100,000 new cases of syphilis every year, and over 1 million cases of gonorrhea. This is the situation why this is so serious. If it were any other disease except the venereal diseases, why this would be in screaming headlines. Why are people afraid to talk about the venereal diseases? Because they say they're connected with sexual intercourse. Why are they connected with sexual intercourse? Because the two diseases of syphilis and gonorrhea cannot be spread except from mucous membrane to mucous membrane for all practical purposes. And in the human body, practically the only place where one mucous membrane can touch another mucous membrane is in sexual intercourse. So that's why the two diseases get spread that way. What should you know about syphilis and gonorrhea? You should know, first of all, that in proper venereal disease education, this does not mean that teenagers are told, play around all you want sexually, but do something so you don't get infected. Absolutely not. Venereal disease education means this, that teenagers, and may I remind you, older adults too, this is not by any means anything exclusive to teenagers. They are simply told that the only effective way to control venereal disease is to avoid sexual promiscuity. It starts in 7th grade in some places. One girl in southern Illinois in 7th grade was found to have over 80 sexual syphilitic contacts. Poor thing. But her life was ruined after that. Now, in venereal disease education, is this something like scaring youngsters? Is it something scaring people? Don't you dare do this or I'll get sick. Absolutely not. It doesn't say that. It just says these are the facts. And from our religious backgrounds, we know already about the rightness and wrongness that sex belongs in marriage, but we also add in venereal disease, we want teenagers to get this information so that by some accident, through ignorance, they would not get innocently contaminated. The fact is, syphilis and gonorrhea can be cured if a physician is sought for treatment. The trouble is that when this disease occurs, people are afraid to seek medical treatment. For example, in syphilis, at the point of infection, wherever this might be, it might be in the genital organs, it might be on the male penis, it might be within the female vagina, anywhere else in the body. There is first what they call a chancre sore, C-H-A-N-C-R-E, coming at the point of infection. This is a painless sore, but it looks very painful. Then it goes away. So the person who gets the social disease thinks nothing wrong with it at all. Then later on, there's a syphilitic rash. It's in the time of the rash and the appearance of this sore that the disease is infectious. Both of these signs go away, so that the person infected with syphilis then thinks that he or she has no disease, forgetting, though, that the disease goes, as it were, underground, burrows into tissue, whether bone, muscle, gland, brain, and 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years later, the damage is done. This is why these diseases are so dangerous and why the government's health service has such a strong campaign on that students would know what we mean by VD education. So the answer still is, by living chastely, by realizing that the sexual powers each one of us has, these sexual powers should be saved for marriage, we have the best protection against VD. But at the same time, we realize that innocent people suffer. What do I mean? Do you know that there's more than 4,000 babies born every year that are syphilitic, born from syphilitic mothers? Babies born blind? Things like this are the reasons why we give VD education. And it leads up into a wholesome attitude towards the body, instead of saying just be scared about it. Now we're going to go into the questions that you have. Okay. So here's number one. Father, would you please describe again the difference between liking and loving? The answer is that we like with no power on our own whatsoever. You like and dislike, and nobody can change that. We have no control over our likes and dislikes, and nobody seems to know psychologically why we like some things and don't like others. We do have control over our love. Liking is a matter of our feelings, pretty generally. Loving is a matter of our will. Do we want it or not? And when we say like someone because, or love although, it means that liking is always easy, but when you love, you have to go very often against your likes, and you say what is best for the person. That's the thing that counts. And you notice when you talk about love, you're talking about a person, not a thing, because the last thing we want to be as human beings is a thing. We want to be somebody. Here's another one. Father, when a male and female think they are ready for marriage, in love terms, and their parents have not given them permission and have disagreement on it, the male gets her pregnant just so marriage can take place. Now, whom would you blame? This is a question that comes up again and again. In one sense, the male is always blaming the female. She made me do it. She made me do it. In the other sense, the female is always blaming the male. He made me do it. The answer is, I think when two human beings are involved, both are at blame. But in this question, is there a true love there if any male would have intercourse with a female? So often you get this statement said, and I had a case where I was talking to a group of high school girls, and this was a high school freshman turning, from the class I was talking to. I knew they were freshmen, but I did not know the identity of the girl. She turns in a question. She says, Father, why are you so hard on this idea of love, that we should realize marriage is permanent? After all, I have a boyfriend, and he tells me I'm the first woman who understood him in his life. Of course, he's 42 and he's divorced, but after all, he said, just because I love him so much, I should prove how much I loved him and give all, so I gave all. And this poor high school freshman just swallowing a line from a big fat head like that. In other words, she never realized she was being played for a sucker, and a real sucker. Another case, talking to a group of high school girls, and I said, if there's anything that can really upset a teenager, I don't think it's so much sex. I think the really bad thing is the matter of drink. One of the girls turned in a question, well, how come you're so rough on us on drinking? After all, I go out weekends with our crowds. We take a couple of six-packs with us, a couple of six-packs of beer, a couple of bottles of wine, or a couple of fifths. Doesn't bother me. I said, the only trouble is, girlie, you're an alcoholic already. That's all you can say. So you see, what answer can you give? The next question. Father, how long should you love a person before getting married? The answer to that is, I wish I knew. Because I'll tell you this, that in married life, love keeps growing. Love never stops. True love keeps growing, and true love realizes there is never any time when you say, I have now loved enough. And true love realizes I will always be asked to give more. Because I love someone, true love does not demand that I be loved. True love says, I hope I am loved by the beloved. I would like to be loved by the beloved, but I don't demand it. Whenever we have a love situation in us that says, I demand love, then we're no longer loving. Then we're just a spoiled brat telling the rest of the human race, okay, love me, love me, love me. But what am I contributing? I should help somebody else. The one thing in marriage that is so necessary is that people be mature enough, not just physically. A good question always comes in on this subject like this. It says, well, Father, if you have to be old enough to be married, why is it that here when we're already in 7th and 8th grade, our bodies are ready to bring new life in the world? And yet we're not permitted to marry by the customs of the culture we're living in. We don't get married till what? 8 years later and things like that. And people who ask that question have a good point, and there's a good answer to it. Just because you and I, when we are in 7th and 8th grade, could bear or could beget new life, this doesn't mean we're ready for marriage. Because marriage is not just a case of bringing a baby in the world. Marriage is a case of bringing up that baby. Marriage is a case of living with another member of the human race, day in and day out. You know what we mean by living day in and day out. It's real wonderful to be the belle of the ball the night before. But remember what she looks like the morning after. And when the Romeo of the night before wakes up the next morning, your local zoo has lost its biggest baboon. This is human nature. Father, what does a boy do when a girl leads him on and then gets mad when he attempts to go all the way? Here is an extremely important bit of information on the different temperamental reactions of the two sexes sexually. A male reacts sexually something like an electric light. When he's stimulated, he gets a fast reaction in his genital organ, namely in his penis, and if he has an emission of semen, it's all over and he's lost his interest. The female reacts something like an electric iron. She is excited sexually much more slowly. It is not true to say that the female is not interested in a sexual reaction, but it is true to say that for her, she's completely involved. See, in everything a woman does, she's involved. All her life, in everything she does. See, the male is not the Budinsky sex. I often like to say this, his theme song is a combination of Old Man River, the Sphinx, and the Great Pyramid. He doesn't want to get involved. Just go your way and I'll go my way, but just don't bother me. The woman gets her fingers in every pie. Well, anyway, the same thing in sexual interest. Her whole body's involved. And this is why when a girl becomes sexually excited, it's almost impossible to stop her. Now, the point that the boy does not realize is this, that first of all, a female is very affectionate and then physically sexual only after that. While in the male, he is not very affectionate first, but he is physically sexual first and then only affectionate. In other words, what I'm saying is that the two sexes react just in a different direction. The male tends to be sexually interested first, and he has to work against that selfish sexual interest in order to be affectionate and to really love somebody else, in the sense of affection. The girl, on the other hand, must realize that her affection might give a fellow the wrong idea. She is very, very lovey-dovey, very oochie-coochie, smoochy and all the rest, if you follow my lingo, my Russian. Well, anyway, the fact is that a boy must not think that because she's so affectionate and just, well, she's very lovable, when she's in a good mood, incidentally. But then he must not take this as a sign, okay, come on and take all. And in this case, this is where a mature approach is there. As soon as one party says to the other, prove that you love me, they don't love each other. And the trouble is this, when teenagers start going around on the premature steady date, notice I said the premature steady date, they are not old enough to know what they're doing. They have no outside interests. They aren't even sure enough of themselves. And so the only thing they can do is try and distract themselves by saying, well, let's get interested in each other sexually, which really means they're not interested in each other. They're interested only in themselves because they're too nervous to do anything else or to talk about anything else. This is why we discourage the premature steady date.